Okay, everybody, I think we'll get started, and those who are late can join us subsequently. I'm Hamish,
And my name is Anna.
and we're going to speak to you today for around 30 minutes about cosmetics ingredient code requirements for China.
So today's agenda, the presentation will be about how to apply for cosmetic ingredient code in China. And we will start by introducing the regulatory framework and the regulatory body that is in charge of cosmetics ingredients in China. And this will be followed by the explanation of what is the cosmetic ingredient safety information platform. We will also talk about how to actually apply for a cosmetic ingredient code, and we will also have a small case study and we'll answer any questions you might have. Yeah, so first we will talk about the regulatory framework. So the regulatory body in charge of cosmetics and also cosmetic ingredients is the NMPA, the National Medical Products Administration. Not only cosmetics, also other products, but for the purpose of today's webinar, we will only speak about cosmetics ingredients. And cosmetics ingredients in China are also regulated by the CSAR. This is the regulation that is relevant, the Cosmetics Supervision and Administration Regulation, quite a mouthful. And another abbreviation that you will see floating around is the IECIC. This stands for the Inventory of Existing Cosmetic Ingredients in China. And this list basically contains all the already registered ingredients that can be readily used in cosmetics that are being imported and sold in China. If, however, a ingredient is not on this IECIC list, then it's considered a new ingredient. Manufacturers of cosmetic ingredients listed in the IECIC are now required to upload ingredient safety information and to create a cosmetic ingredient code. And this is what the topic of today's webinar is. So not to be confused with cosmetics registration of a new ingredient. So today we will be talking about ingredients that are already registered. So if you're still a little bit confused, this slide will help you. So first thing is you look, if you have a cosmetic ingredient, is you ask yourself, is it already registered in China? Is it on the IECIC list? If not, then you have to do a new cosmetic registration in China. This is a lengthy process and involves some testing. And also once it is filed or registered, there's a 3-year monitoring period. And but if the ingredient is indeed on the IECIC list, then as of last year, with the introduction of more and more regulations, you are now also required to submit additional safety information of this ingredient. And this is what we will be talking about today. This can either be done by the cosmetic company who wants to register their products, by submitting a full ingredient safety information, or with help of the ingredient manufacturer who first applies for the cosmetic ingredient code, which then can be subsequently used for the cosmetic registration.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. And I'll just supplement that by saying that the new cosmetic ingredient is quite an interesting point just to talk about briefly. We won't go into detail about the process for new ingredient registration or filing, but we are supporting customers to go through the new filing registration process. And it has opened up, so to speak, in the last year or so. It used to be extremely difficult to get such new ingredients approved and added to the IECIC, but that seems to be developing and changing, and such process takes a year or so. It is quite a considerable investment, but it can be, yeah, it's an interesting thing to keep a watch on if that's relevant for your company. And then, of course, there's the ingredient submission code, which is relevant for already approved products that are on the IECIC list, and most relevant for cosmetic filings, cosmetic products filings, as part of the closer scrutiny of cosmetics and the safety of its ingredients. So going to a little bit more detail, yeah, Anna talked about the overall overview. We just set out a definition here in the first line about the natural or artificial ingredients used for cosmetics for the first time in China. That's the definition of a new cosmetic ingredient. As well as the scope, the applicant, and the purpose. On the other hand, the IECIC has around 8,500 ingredients listed, and there are, as I mentioned, 8 or 10 added in the last year or so. So it's relatively minor compared to the overall percentage, but that has been accelerating in the last few years and seems to be gaining some momentum. We just remind again not to confuse the two. New ingredients is different to the submission code. And so the key differentiator is, of course, relating to the IECIC definition.
So now we will be speaking about what the cosmetic ingredient safety information platform actually is. So here you can see a screenshot of said platform, and in January last year, the NMPA launched the cosmetic ingredient safety information platform for existing cosmetic ingredients in China. The platform is in Chinese characters only at the moment, and before you can submit any safety information of ingredients, you have to first set up a user account.
So continuing on this topic, the code, as we've mentioned, known as the cosmetics ingredients code, is obtained by the manufacturer of the ingredient or the supplier, and is then provided to the cosmetic registrant or filer when they're making their application to the cosmetics products for China. This is somewhat analogous to the drug master filing, and that's where it comes from. It allows companies and suppliers to retain their confidential information, such as manufacturing process or other detailed information, and it also streamlines the process for the approval of the end cosmetic product. And so it's quite interesting. What else to say? Yeah, here's a snapshot we've taken of the online platform, which is available only in Chinese. It is a publicly available platform with an output, but there's very little data shown, and you cannot search, so to speak. So although it's public on the one hand, it's not a searchable database. On the other hand, you can't search by ingredient. For example, you can generally, as a filer, only see that information which you have submitted. Important to mention that there's been some recent updates here, which is a welcome development, because companies were very concerned about some hard deadlines which were coming up as of May 1st and have now been extended. So the first milestone to refer to is that cosmetics, and it relates specifically to cosmetic products, filed or registered on or before May 1st, 2021, are required to update their information relating to safety and technical standards for cosmetics for the quality specifications. They have a deadline, or they previously had an earlier deadline, which has now been extended to January 1st of next year, of 2024.
And just to interject here, so this is specific for some ingredients in the safety and technical standards for cosmetics, the STSC, that have certain limitations or requirements. For instance, some colorants may have raw material requirements, so forth. So this is not applicable to all cosmetics ingredients, but only to some.
Yeah, and generally the breakdown is between some specific special ingredients, or ingredients with specific high risk, as it's seen by the China regulator, products or ingredient, and we've mentioned them here. So for cosmetics registered or filed between May of 2021 and December of this year, if the product formula uses ingredients with antiseptic, sunscreen, coloring, hair dyeing, freckle and whitening functions, then you need to submit updated quality information documents or the CIC, the ingredient code, before January 1st, 2024. The ingredient safety information of other ingredients in the formula then needs to be retained by the registrant and filer for future reference. So it doesn't necessarily need to be submitted in the same way as was previously required. And it reduces the burden on cosmetics products manufacturers as well as the cosmetics ingredient suppliers. Now, the other development is that for products that are submitted following or after January 1st of next year, those registrants or filers need to submit all the ingredient safety information used in the product formula as part of their new cosmetics registration and filing process. So the additional burden which had been imposed on previously registered cosmetics is now only imposed on newly registered cosmetics as of 1st of January next year. Just to recap again, I guess the summary is that companies that file their cosmetics before January 1st next year have reduced safety rules required for their ingredients, or at least they don't need to submit such a safety information to the regulator. On the other hand, if you file or register your cosmetics as of next year, then you will need to provide full safety information
of every ingredient.
That means, and remember, safety information can either be the safety information in the form of what we call Annex 14 or the ingredient submission code.
So now we will speak about how to actually submit the cosmetic ingredient safety information. And Hamish just mentioned it. So either you have option 1 as a cosmetic company of a finished cosmetic product, either you submit a completed Annex 14 with the safety information questionnaire, and obviously the safety information of this ingredient, you need the help of the manufacturer to complete this. On the other hand, there's another option. If the ingredient manufacturer or supplier doesn't feel comfortable with that, he can also open an account on the platform and submit all this information himself and create a cosmetic ingredient code. And then this code can just be passed on to the cosmetic company, who then uses this code for its filing or registration of their finished cosmetics. So these are the two options that you have.
Yeah, I would also add that, of course, we act for various customers in helping them obtain this code, both either applying on their behalf or completing the information in the form of Annex 14. And so it's not all down to you as the manufacturer or supplier. There is support and help up there.
So the next question is how to actually apply for a cosmetic ingredient code.
Who can submit it? First of all, it's only the persons in the supply chain responsible for the safety of the cosmetic ingredient. This is generally the ingredient manufacturer. They can also appoint, as I referred to, an authorized representative. You need to sign a letter of authorization to do this. This then allows the distributor or ingredient manufacturer or third party to submit on the customer behalf. Just a practice point to be aware of is that the platform is exclusively in Chinese, so there can be some difficulty navigating such platform, and all information also needs to be submitted in Chinese. So let's look at step 1. The step 1 is in this graph form we put out on the slide to set up your legalization or notarization, which is the document process that allows you to then authorize a third party or obtain the account yourself. The manufacturer or ingredient supplier should select a Chinese name for the company. All information must be in Chinese. We help companies provide name suggestions if necessary. The next step is either a scenario 1 or a scenario 2, which we put in yellow and blue. The manufacturer provides their company registration documents, which need to be with the support of the local Chinese embassy in the company's home country. Needs to be legalized, or the original registration documents for notarization by a Chinese public notary. Or scenario 2, if instead the manufacturer would delegate such authorization to a third party, then there's the letter of authorization process, signing process, which is generally a more straightforward process, I would add, and streamlined. But it just depends how you would like to set up, and continue to comply with the requirements over time. There's a translation element because, just as I mentioned, the documentation needs to be in Chinese. There's a specific format of the information that needs to be provided relating to the safety of the ingredient. That is part of the submission code process. Then you complete the account setup. Step 2 is then submitting the cosmetic ingredient safety information to obtain the code. So step 1 is more about the manufacturer information. Step 2 is more about the particular ingredient. You only need to do the step 1 once per manufacturer. Step 2 is per ingredient. So that's
once the manufacturer has an account, he can use it for subsequent ingredient submissions.
Exactly. And the safety information relating to a particular ingredient is relatively standard form, but of course it will be very specific to each ingredient. There's a translation element again, and then the code is generated. There's a unique code for each manufacturer for each of their ingredients. That code is then what you supply to your cosmetics brand customers or others in the supply chain.
Yeah. And maybe one more mention is that prior communication between the ingredient manufacturer and the cosmetics brand or the cosmetics registrant is very important, because you need to ensure the consistency in the information that both parties submit, especially when it comes to compound ingredients, to make sure that it's really consistent. Otherwise, if there's any discrepancy, the NMPA will pick up on it.
Yep. Thank you, Anna. So a few practice points, and Anna, maybe you could take us through.
Yeah, sure. So this is about the cosmetics ingredient submission code. This is automatically generated by the computer after submission of the safety information. And the code consists of a 5-digit manufacturer code, a 6-digit ingredient code, and a 3 to 4-digit quality specification of raw material code. So here you can see that really every CIC, every cosmetic ingredient code is manufacturer specific. If the ingredient is a compound ingredient, the ingredient codes, the 6-digit ingredient code starts with the digit 1. If it's a single ingredient, it starts with the digit 0. And one other point to note is that if you already have a code, but the cosmetic ingredient safety information changes, it is the ingredient manufacturer's requirement that he starts a new application and applies for a new code, because it's not possible to apply for changes. Okay, now we will speak about the public system of the registered cosmetic ingredient code. The NMPA discloses some information of the raw material composition and safety information on the public system. However, as you can see here, this is just a couple digits in the beginning, and also only the first 2 components.
Yeah, so here's a link to the relevant platform if you're interested. And of course, if you'd like a copy of the slides, please email us afterwards. You can see also in this red circle, we've indicated how many ingredients are currently registered. Actually, I think the number is now rapidly increasing. So a lot of ingredient manufacturers, suppliers are obtaining this code, and the number of ingredients on the platform has vastly increased over the last few months.
So now we will speak about a small case study.
So yeah, we just set out a typical example on the slide here. Company A, for example, is a cosmetic ingredient manufacturer or supplier based in France, responsible, according to the Chinese definition, for the safety of their cosmetic ingredients. They supply the ingredients to company B, which is, for example, a cosmetic skincare company in Germany. Now, company B is seeking to sell its skincare products to China. They need to make the relevant filing. Let's assume it's a general cosmetic. Then, as part of that filing, they need to report the safety information of the relevant cosmetic ingredients used to make the finished product at the time of application. As I mentioned in the timeline, for which ingredients the safety information needs to be required or submitted, I should say, differs depending on whether they are filing in this year or at the start of next year. So that's just something to be aware of, and you should discuss with your relevant advisor or internally about and check the guidelines about the requirements. Company B, by the way, does not have to access the safety information of the ingredients of the company A, the supplier, if such company wants to keep it confidential. The way to do that is to submit the CIC. So what would we recommend? Company B, the cosmetics brand, should check all the ingredients are listed, first of all, in the IECIC. This is part of the cosmetics formula and packaging pre-check we would usually support our customers with. Company B should also request the cosmetic ingredient supplier, Company A, to either apply for the ingredient code and obtain the code that it can submit together with its other information, or provide all relevant safety information in the form of Annex 14. This is an either or. So even following January 1st next year, you can do either. You can provide the submission code, or you can provide all the information in the form of Annex 14. If it's item 1 above, i.e. you've got the code, then of course Company A needs to go about setting up its online account and obtaining the relevant code. Then the ingredient supplier can share the code with not only the cosmetics customer on this occasion, but other potential cosmetics customers who use the same ingredient that the ingredient supplier will supply to in the supply chain. And that's a very brief overview of what the process looks like. That actually takes us to the end of our presentation. It's just a snapshot about the latest status and about how companies can think about such ingredient registrations, which has been a hot topic over the last, because of the regulatory change over the last year or so. I've also, for your information, set out what we do as a company as Kizema and how we support customers for China cosmetics services. We not only act as the local agent, we also help with checking about cosmetics ingredients and formula, whether they're compliant with China IECIC or other requirements. We help with obtaining the cosmetics marketing approvals for their brands, as well as new ingredient registrations or filings that we've mentioned earlier. Testing needs to be done as part of both the cosmetic product as well as ingredient registration filings, which we support with. And of course, the code generation we support many customers to obtain as well. You may also be interested that we support companies who require factory inspections or audits to prepare with the pre-audit, particularly in the realm of cosmetics regulations that is becoming more stringent because of concerns about safety of the products. There now are requirements relating to audits of factories by the NMPA, by the cosmetics regulator in China, of overseas factories or entrusted enterprises. And so this is something to be aware of over time as the overseas factory inspections develops for your cosmetics GMP. If you'd like more information about that, please let me know. And we can help with China GMP, QMS, or SOP preparation, gap analysis, and adaptations. Okay, so that's our 30 minutes up, and I don't want to take up more of your time. We just really wanted to give you a brief snapshot of the latest updates and the processes, and be very happy to talk to you more about your questions in more detail or with more information after the session. Thank you for your time and have a nice day.